Welcome in, everybody. Pro Football Enterprises. I'm Ben Parker. That's Austin Freed. That's Shane Ratliff. We are loaded tonight doing two separate shows. You'll see them both here on this channel. Thank you all for being with us. This summer, the past several weeks, we have done a ton of work. Over 50 NFL prospects we've done. A few of them went onto the 27 watch list, but by far, most of them will probably be in the 26 NFL draft. We've got three more of those guys tonight. We've already done, I don't know, pushing 20 wide receivers, actually 20 wide receivers. We're adding three more on tonight here. We'll get to them in just a second. But if you want to see the other people that we did, all right, if you want to see the offensive guards, the offensive tackles, if you want to see the wide receivers, go over to the channel. It'll be the playlist will be here at the end of the channel. You can see that at the end of the show. Go over and check all that out. We're not going to stop doing that during the NFL regular season, but we're going to slow it down. So every couple of weeks, we'll come out with a couple of new prospects that we're kind of watching throughout the season. And that way, we're not completely disconnected from the draft process, but we will slow a lot of that down because there's so much going on during the NFL season and the college football season as well. Let's get right into it. Tonight's first prospect, Josh Cameron from Baylor, 6'1", 225 in the weight department. 52 catches last year for 745 yards, 14 and a half yards per catch, and 10 touchdowns. Austin, I'll let you lead it off here on Josh Cameron.
Yeah, I looked at this guy and immediately was like, is that Cordero Patterson's son? Like he just looks so much like Cordero, not physically in terms of like the face or anything, but the way he moves, the stature, honestly, like just his the way he lines up to the line, it just so much reminded me of Cordell Patterson, who's one of my favorites, who obviously didn't necessarily work out that great as a wide receiver, but ended up turning
Yeah.
himself into a great running back and is one of the greatest kickoff returners of all time. I don't know how much Cameron does on special teams, but I get the vibe that he could be a special teams, a kick return monster if he wanted to be, because he's got that gliding stride with, a big, powerful frame, and then just these really great fluid hips that let him kind of contort his body and keep his balance underneath him while being able to use his big frame to kind of run through arm tackles. And so it kind of all equates to that, big return man style of like a Patterson or like a Josh Cribbs. Um, his actual receiving route running, I think, is pretty poor right now. That there's a lot that needs to develop there, but he's got really natural run after the catch ability that kind of goes along with that kick return stuff. And I thought his hands were pretty okay. Like, I'm not going to complain about his hands right now. I think they're good enough to get the job done. I think overall, he's a prospect I'm looking to, develop a little bit of that technique and use some of the natural just athleticism that he has to develop. And I think this could be a really good football player down the line.
I've got some interesting and unusual notes on Josh Cameron here. We'll get to those in a second. Shane, your turn, man.
Well, from Austin's end, I like the Cribs connection on that too. Um, it, and Austin talked about kind of, I don't know how much of a special teams player, just like Austin was saying, but you see the natural cutting ability. You can see once he has the ball in his hands, the ability to make defenders miss that way, but he also makes it very difficult for them to take great angles to come after him. Part of that helps being in a Baylor offense that's going to spread the ball around and get people into open space. Um, I would agree with Austin. I'm not going to knock the hands. We've seen worse that we've rated before. I don't think they're elite, but not a lot of drops in the tape that I saw. One thing I would like to see, and I think, again, it's not so much on him, it might be on the offense. There wasn't a ton of times where they let him uh, really just go get it. Throw it up and let's see what he can do. He has speed. He has the ability in the open field. Get him the ball out there. Let him do that. I like the Cordell Patterson because if you watch a lot of the screen game with him, once he gets the ball in his hands, he likes to attack that line of scrimmage very quickly. and that'll fill. For me, out of the ones that we've seen, I don't put him in the upper echelon, but I also don't think that he's in the lower end. Weaknesses that I saw, um, as Austin mentioned, I think the route tree is something that we would come back to, but I also don't know in the last couple of years for him at Baylor what he's really been asked to do. Um, right now, I think he's a transitional wide receiver. Even with his size, he might be a guy that's better off in the slot as opposed to being on the outside. Uh, but I think this year is going to be a marked improvement for him. He's going to have a quarterback that's got another year under center, a Baylor team that's looking to make a full rebound. So could be a huge year for him. Only going to help the draft stock.
All right, here it is. Visual imaging. I'm big on it. You'll hear that in a second, and I'll come back to each of you for kind of where you're looking at in the draft and final thought on him. Here it goes. Excellent punt returner. They actually did use him a lot on punt returns, so you guys kind of alluded to that they do that. He's not killer, but he's good at it. He's effective. Breaks tackles. Saw a lot of broken tackles. Y'all mentioned that as well. Real breaks tackles. Here it comes. Not really an above the rim guy. I didn't see a lot of vertical jumping up and down, high leaping ability. That's okay. Um, Basketball, he reminded me of Charles Barkley or Dennis Rodman. You talk about a guy who's not that tall, but physically makes his presence felt, and not he's not collecting rebounds, but it's almost like in a lot of cases he's posting up and grabbing the ball that way. I mean, he's just got that. It reminded me visually of a guy who's more of a kind of a power forward kind of a guy, not a center. And that was the imaging that it brought up here. Smart. This is a smart player. He's physical. He's good after the catch, especially when he's out there toward the boundary or a little bit deeper. He's very good after the catch. Pretty good speed, but not elite. So he's got the speed that it takes, but I didn't see the elite burner. He's not faster than a lot of these defensive backs. He's faster than the linebackers. He's as fast as some of these DBs, but he's not running away from defensive backs. Slot tight end style, but plays on the outside. Shane, you kind of mentioned some of that. He's really got more of a slot tight end kind of a style, but they put him out there on the boundary all the time. He's out there playing a lot of the X role. Shifty in route running and getting open. He's got a little bit of shift to him. It's kind of hard to explain it. Y'all mentioned that he doesn't really run the true route tree. He doesn't, but he's kind of shifty. He finds ways to get open. Makes people miss a lot. Not shake and bake. He doesn't have that electric, break your ankles cut, but he does have smooth cuts. Y'all mentioned that, and he maintains his speed when he does it. He's very natural at that. He can really keep his speed and just have good, nice cut and angles that makes it hard for people to tackle him. That's very good. Let's see. Not many jump ball catches. I already mentioned that as well. Here's some more. I watched a lot of tape on this guy. More getting open than route running. I noticed that a lot. Just more getting open. He runs these little hooks. He runs his own. He'll get behind a player and they'll kind of lose track of him. A lot of that. Not a lot of route running, just a lot of getting open. He seems to just have a knack for that. A lot of out routes, lots of curls, lots of wide receiver screens. Not a lot of deep verticals. Shane, you mentioned they didn't let him just run and go get it. There weren't a lot of verticals on that. I don't know if that's a speed thing. Not a lot of yak over the middle, but he still has a good slant that he'll get you first downs on. I could go on. That's enough. I like this player. I've got somewhere between a late second, early third round grade on him. Is kind of where I'm at. I could go either way on that, depending on what he shows this next year. I'm interested in this player. I want him on my team, but I also don't have to have him. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Austin, back to you for final thoughts on Cameron.
Yeah, when you mentioned like the route running and how like it's like he's kind of shifty and gets open or whatever verbiage you used, I used uh awkwardly effective is what I have in my notes.
Right.
And that goes back to those like hips I was talking about. When you see him just like turn sideways and keep his like speed moving really well, like that's just great
Yes.
hits. And it's just something that you
Yeah.
see some guys have. And I feel like it's one of those things that allows like the really good returners to do, but it also really helps in short area route running. And I think that's something
Yes.
he has. I think yeah, awkward. He's built kind of awkward, I guess. Like he's a
Right.
little top heavy. At least looks like he's a little top heavy. Not that that's necessarily the worst thing. You'd think usually the top heavy guys, though, tend to go down a little bit easier, and he doesn't. So I think that kind of
Right.
plays into his strength. I really would like to see him. I don't know if I saw him track any deep balls
Mm.
where he was what it wasn't a busted coverage. Like there were a few
Right.
busted coverages and things like that, but
Yeah.
I want to see him get a DB, stack the DB, and then track it towards the boundary, make the basket catch, or go high point it, whatever. That's something I like have to see that on tape. It is very rare to see a player have as much production as he had without doing that at all, at least. And I didn't watch every snap
Yeah.
of him. I'm sure it's out there, but the last thing that popped into my mind though when I was kind of like sitting there picturing him play while y'all were talking was y'all reminding me a lot of the things I saw when I was scouting Drake London, specifically Ben, what
Mm.
you were saying,
Yeah.
and I think that's a decent thought of like he could be Drake London, not not quite as big or not definitely not as strong. Drake London is incredibly strong, but and more shifty. But I think he's got a lot of the tools that Drake London has, and I think could develop into that style receiver and have a lot of success if he does.
Shane?
I like the Drake London from Austin. And the one thing you mentioned, Ben, that I'd like to hit on, you were talking about the more power forward center basketball. Uh, he was like a Charles Barkley to me, where like a guy that's a bigger body. Austin mentioned like the
Yeah.
bigger upper body, lower body, but
Yes.
he has like an odd fluidity where you just go, oh, he's pretty big to be doing that.
Mhm.
Like you said, Baylor played him on the outside. I'd like to see him more on the inside. I think especially when you're somebody that has that type of ability that Austin mentioned, where you can basically slide around with the hips that you have. I know Baylor still runs a lot of mesh concepts, so your outside guy really runs what the inside guy does. They mirror on the backside to try to get some different coverages thrown there. Um, I think Austin's example of Drake London, I think he would be happy to be a Drake London. Like Austin said, not as big, um, but has that ability. I watched a lot of tape on him. That's why I really came up with the deep ball. Again, like I said, it could be pure offensive coordinator, but Austin mentioned it. When you have that many yards, and there's not a bunch of just throw the ball and go get it routes. You're not talking about 70-yard touchdowns where you ran by two defenders. It's
Mhm.
it's a shortcut, caught ball, and 45 touchdown. Short ball, get me the ball, 15-yard right inside the red zone, touchdown. I didn't see a lot where he really got to let it loose. Like you said, I don't know if that's a true mark of his speed and where he sits. I like your assumption, Ben, on where he's probably second or third round. I think with a big year, he could probably put himself securely on that like second echelon of wide receivers we went through. Um, the thing for me though is he doesn't have one characteristic other than that shiftiness that really steps
Right.
out. And we've talked about some guys that have that type of shift, but with some high end speed.
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of what holds him away from that top group of guys that we've discussed this year already.
Excellent work. I like everything you are saying here. My last couple of notes really fights to get open. I like the effort and the intensity when he's trying to get open. That's really there in spades. You don't always see that from everybody. He does not usually block for his wide receiver teammates as well as they block for him, I noticed. The effort is often there, and sometimes he does punch people. Other times it's really sloppy, and it's like he's just kind of El Matadoring out there, red flag in front of a bull. So, I would love to see that a little more attention to detail there. But again, I do like Josh Cameron here. Okay, that's excellent work. That's as good as you'll find anywhere on Josh Cameron, guaranteed. From what the three of us put together, that is excellent on Josh Cameron. Stay tuned to him. Should have a good year at Baylor. Next up, Germie Bernard from Alabama. Also 6'1", but a little bit lighter, 205, 50 catches last year. 794 receiving yards, 15.9 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. Shane, you're up first.
So not that we're going to hit the same player as we just talked about, but like you said, same height requirement, a different play style. I think Alabama already sets you up that way. The other thing for him is that he has a true number one that's opposite him at Alabama. Ryan Williams is there. That's going to be the number one guy. That's what you're looking for. I'll be interested to see what Bernard has coming out of this year to see where he does. I think he has excellent hands. Saw a pretty good route tree from him. Developing skill set where I'd really like to see is attacking the ball. I think he's more of a catcher than he is strong hands and get out there and get the ball and play. I think it shows for him that the touchdowns, you see the numbers low. It's only 2 touchdowns. We're not talking about a lot of guys that had that lower number, but he has the skill set. But again, I think for him to increase that, you have to be the guy that gets the ball. I know Ryan Williams is a 1A, and whatever you do, it's going to be hard for you to surpass that. But there were some times last year where it just didn't look like he was always ready to be that number 2 guy. And when defenses flipped over and covered Ryan Williams right away, you would have liked to see him be able to get into some of those zones and attack once he gets there. He'd be a guy right now where I'd kind of hold out on where we're going to place him in the draft. For me, there wasn't a characteristic that jumped out. Again, like I said, it's hard. There's a lot of guys in the SEC we covered, and especially when one of the number ones is the guy right next to you. But I think the one thing of the guys that we haven't really said is that next athlete, a solid route tree out of him. So you can project, okay, maybe if we get him more open, maybe he's the number one. I can play off of this. He can play with any different quarterback. I think the quarterback change at Alabama is going to help him. I think with Grubbs being the offensive coordinator there again, with his partner in crime from the Washington days, I think that's going to help that offense. And I think this year his numbers will improve. Like I said, though, I didn't see one trait that jumped out to me, and that's kind of what holds him back in my ratings.
Audience watching, y'all have said this before, and y'all have heard this before if you've watched this before. We do not homogenize our opinions. We don't even talk about our opinions before we get on air, all right? So that's a good thing for you, the audience, because we may all three see a guy differently, or 2 of us may see him one way and 1 of us see him very differently. So I'm always curious if y'all see it the way I see it. I've got my thoughts on Germie. We'll get to him in a second. Austin, how are you feeling about Bernard?
I feel like I feel the same as Shane. I just put a more positive twist on it, I feel like. Rather than saying he has no standout traits, I see no weaknesses here. But it's very much the same. It's the other side of the same coin. Nothing stands out. There really isn't a thing you can hang your hat on when you watch him, but I really have no. I mean, there are things I can nitpick, and I'm not necessarily in love with. I'm really not in love with anything, but sure, could he be a little faster, a little stronger, uh, a little more? I think, uh, like you said, attacking the ball. I think he lets the ball catch him sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very those are very minor things. I think he plays a really smart style of football. I think he's very creative. I think he's pretty athletic. He reminded me of Jeremy Maclin. I don't know if y'all remember him
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
from
Nice pull.
thank you. Who I didn't realize this. I thought when I went to look up Jeremy Maclin, I was like, oh, this guy's going to be a 3rd round pick probably who just ended up being pretty good. No, he was in the top 20.
Mm-hmm.
He was drafted very high. I did not know that. But just I get those vibes of like a guy who doesn't really excel at anything, but doesn't necessarily have any weaknesses. You can play him on the outside or the inside. He can take a screen. He can do an end around. He can catch a deep ball. One thing I did really like that he had was I thought his shoulders were really good when running through the middle. Like he gets skinny and he ducks underneath people when they try and press him. And I think and he takes shots well. There were a few times, like lack of strength I talked about a little bit. There are a few times where DBs would kind of stick him pretty good on his outside shoulder, and he would just kind of take it and go, and it wouldn't like stop him because he was able to instead of letting it hit him hard, he would let it kind of glance off of him and it'd catch him, but it'd be more of a glancing blow that wouldn't stop him dead in his tracks. Versus some guys get hit square in the chest, and they're just stopping. I didn't really see that at all with him. I also really liked. I already mentioned his like kind of creativity, but I think he looked like he knew exactly like what the quarterback wanted to do. Like him and Milrow seemed to have a really good connection, and I don't know if that's just two guys who ended up to happen to be right all the time, or if they, worked on that a lot, or if that's just him like knowing ball and like kind of understanding what the quarterback wants. Uh, you know, Randall Cobb's type stuff of just like knowing what Aaron Rodgers wanted to do on that play, and I saw a lot of that with Germie and Milrow last year. So we'll see what it looks like with the new quarterback this year and how that might affect his play. But this is a guy who I am surprisingly high on. He just was like, I was just like watching him at first and I was a little unimpressed. And I just kept watching and watching. And it went from being unimpressed to being impressed about how I just couldn't really find anything to write down. Um, yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
Also, it's a great note about the shoulders. In fact, I just wrote it down because I didn't pick up on that. So when I watch him, come the spring and we're watching this tape again, I'll be looking at the shoulders thing. That's a very good note on that. All right, here comes the notes, and then I'll get back to y'all with the final thought. First thing I thought does not look 6'1". He looks a little shorter to me. I mean, when I compare him to all the DBs around, I'm not sure that's a real problem. He just didn't look 6'1" when I was consistently watching him. Good at finding open areas and zones. He seems to have a great feel for that. He really seemed to find all the open holes in the zones. I thought that was very good. Good in zone and in the red zone. I thought both areas were areas that he just seemed to really have a great feel for. And again, whether that's him connecting with the quarterback or just him on his own being really good at it, I thought he had a good feel for that. So I thought that was effective. Good vertical leap. There's a couple of guys that have a bigger, but I noticed more than one play where he can just get up, straight up. I think he's got a very good vertical leap there that he's working with that helps off of what I think is less than 6'1". Here it comes. Does break tackles, but not consistently. There are times where he breaks tackles and times where he just doesn't, and it's like game in, game out, week in, week out. It was not consistent, but he does it sometimes. He does make guys miss sometimes, but not consistently. Again, it was like there are times he's got nice moves, and other times it went down pretty easy. I didn't see him doing that consistently, but it is there on tape. To me, he looks faster than linebackers, but not faster than most of the SEC DBs he's playing against. I think he seemed like he does not have that extra gear consistently, and so that I knocked him a little bit for that. Can beat man coverage horizontally sometimes, but not usually vertically. I saw him getting good separation, working across the field. I didn't see it against man going deep a lot. I just didn't see him beating straight up man a whole lot downfield. Works well in traffic, both with and without the ball. Maybe that's some of the shoulder stuff that you were noticing specifically, Austin. But yeah, I thought whether he's got the ball or not, he seemed to be totally, totally happy working through traffic. Just didn't seem to bother him at all in any way. Shane, you mentioned the solid routes. I said solid routes, not brilliant, but he seems like he's a good route runner. He's got that route tree worked out reasonably well. So I like that. Defenses frequently lost track of him. He just was not their focus. There are several big plays on film of this guy, and the defense has just forgotten about him. I think they're double coveraging or bracketing Ryan Williams. They're scared to death of Ryan, and they just lost track of Germie, to be honest. There are several plays like that. William Blocker, great effort. Sometimes more effective than others, though. He does not come across as the tough, physical, big guy that we just talked about with Cameron. He just doesn't. So he's a very willing blocker. He's really putting it out there. Sometimes he gets pushed around. He looks tied for the fourth fastest guy on the team, behind Ryan Williams, Jalen Milrow, and the running back Miller. which again, that's a good group of fast guys ahead of him. But I just didn't see that burning speed. I thought there was a second running back. I thought there was another wide receiver that looked just as fast as him. And I get it, it's Alabama; they got fast guys, but I just did not see the burning speed out of him that I've seen from some of these other guys. There's more, but that'll do for now. So, anyway, I've got somewhere at the moment a fourth to fifth round grade on him. I just didn't see any burst out of him. But if he has another good season, boy, if he shows that he's really effective with this, I got no problem moving him on up in the draft as well. If he has another excellent season. So, Shane, back to you. Final thoughts here.
Well, first, I think it's like Austin said. If you're like me and you kind of look on the dark side already on this, uh, Bernard, for me, it didn't jump out. As Austin said, though, I also didn't have a lot to nitpick on. But for what we've done already on this group of wide receivers, I think I mentioned it earlier already. You have to have at least a distinguishing characteristic, or you really get lost in the shuffle here. Um, the number one thing of the notes that we've talked about that you mentioned, Ben, is I saw the same thing. Defenses covered Ryan Williams and left him open, and yet he still only ended up with 2 touchdowns on the year. So you think with those other opportunities, he could have, just gotten himself into the 6, 7, 10, even 10 touchdown realm just by opportunities alone. I think he's a guy that has an opportunity this year to show, maybe he's more of a threat than he showed in the last year. The thing for me is, like I said, no distinguishing trait. As Austin mentioned, the thing is he's not bad at anything. There's nothing I'm going to sit here and go, well, I'll tell you what, I don't even know if he's draftable. He's not that guy. He's not at all. But in the way that the league is, you need to have something to stand on because the league can find guys that are going to just catch the ball and do what they're told. That's now is not okay. There were years before in the NFL where you could have been that guy. Now there's too many guys that all run a 4.3. You need to have something that's going to make you stand out, or you need to at least be up to their speed. So I think, like you said, he's a late round guy for me right now.
Austin, final word on Germie.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Shane, with talking about like how it's just not modern NFL really anymore. I had to go back to 2009 with Jeremy Maclin to find like, a guy who had success at his stature or really just athletic profile in general. Um, I think another one, and this is really lofty, like Reggie Wayne, like similar vibe. Reggie Wayne, I think was a good bit faster, but
Mm-hmm.
not really explosive or strong or like he just didn't have a lot of those traits and wasn't necessarily a burner either. Right? Wayne was fast. He wasn't a blazer.
Right.
Specifically, definitely not by today's standards. Maybe, in the early 2000s, late late 2000s, would have been considered really fast, but not by today's standards, certainly. And I think that is part of the problem is I feel like in today's modern NFL, you got to have a trait. And that's why you see guys get drafted super high, when they have just like one distinguishing trait. We saw it with Matthew Golden last year. Nothing really jumped off the page about Matthew Golden
Right.
except for that electric speed. So,
Right.
it gets taken in the first round. So that is sort of a problem. And I'm not going to pretend it's not. Now, what he could do is have an absolute monster year
Mm-hmm.
production wise, and that kind of eases the thoughts and say, well, almost Devontae Smith. Now, Devontae Smith has all sorts of different skill sets and things that let him be elite that aren't just size and speed because playing receiver in the NFL is a lot more than being able to run fast, jump high. But uh, if he could have a electric season and really prove that like his physical limitations aren't as limiting as they might seem, then I think he could soar up to be, a second rounder. But I'm kind of with you guys right now. I have him as a late third round to fourth round pick.
Yeah, I think we're seeing this guy fairly similar, even though we might be coming up from different angles. I want this guy on my team. I just don't want to get him first or second round at the moment. But again, if he cranks it on up to 900, 1,000 yards, if he's figuring out ways to get this done anyway, and he's got more than 2 TDs, maybe he's up to 5 to 7 touchdowns. He could be a quarterback's real friend. So I like this guy. I have a place for him in a lot of my teams, and we'll see what kind of a year he turns out. It's Germie Bernard, Alabama. This last guy, we'll just take one turn each on him and bring the show kind of up to full gear here. Bryce Lance from North Dakota State. I really wanted to talk about this guy for no other reason than that he's from North Dakota State. All right, that was really the big driving force here. But I do have some nice things to say about him. 6'3", 209, so he's got the height. 75 catches last year, over 1,000 receiving yards. 14.1 yards per catch, and then 17 touchdowns there against the FCS opponents that he's playing. Again, one turn each. We'll hit Bryce Lance here. Austin, back to you first, man.
So yeah, this is Trey Lance's little brother. So yeah, that's why he's at North Dakota State. But I don't necessarily know that he has a place in a big Power Five school as an elite receiver right now. He has that frame, and when you describe someone as 6'3", 205 pounds or whatever, uh, you kind of expect them to be a little bit lanky and awkward. He is not. He has elite, and I truly mean that, elite body control. Like that dude, I feel like knows where every atom in his body is at all times. It is awesome to watch, and it really lets him make some highlight plays when you pair that with his really strong hands.
Yeah.
That's about where it ends for me. He doesn't really have top end speed. His quickness is limited. I don't think he has really any sort of trait that jumps off the page besides just having really strong hands and incredible body control. Uh, that being said, with that frame, I think he could grow into it a little bit more, add a little bit of muscle, and get a little bit more explosive. And then I think you would see him break out. But as it stands today, I think a lot of the highlights you see him make are because of the great hands and body control, and because the competition he's playing just lets him kind of get away with being a more average athlete because he's got plays for North Dakota State. You would see the limitations physically a lot more if he was playing for Alabama.
Shane.
Well, I think with Austin opening up, this is Trey Lance's brother. That's where a lot of anyone's, if you're looking at your background on skill set, you go, okay, brother is huge, drafted in the first round, athletic, and then people see what Trey Lance has kind of become in the NFL, maybe except for this preseason, and you go, okay, I see where this guy is. As Austin mentioned, I think FCS level, a ton of touchdowns. You can't shut. Doesn't matter who's covering you. 17 touchdowns in a season is still big numbers. I think the body awareness, even the photo that you're showing right there, Ben, and the ability for him to go up, get the ball, read where defenders are, and feel that, I think it helps probably having a brother who probably threw, I don't know, 1,000,000 passes to you throughout the lifetime where he was the quarterback and you were the wide receiver. If I'm not mistaken, I think these guys are from Minnesota originally before they ended up at North Dakota State. So they played some pretty decent high school football in that area. I think the biggest thing that I would key on off of what Austin said is I put H-back mentality. I think he's a guy that in the offenses you run now, you could put him in the slot, let him do a couple other things. If he's going to grow like his brother did in the last couple of years of his college career, I think he can put that weight on. I don't think he has blazing speed or anything like that. So by putting a couple extra pounds on, how much slower you're going to get, or how much faster would you be if you dropped a little bit? I do think that he plays up to competition, though, which is what you're looking for guys that are at that FCS level. If when they get a chance to go against, for North Dakota State, it's like Iowa State, Colorado, those type of teams. If you get to be their beginning of the year sacrificial lamb, if you still have a great game against them, it kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking for. Guys that did that at FCS, like Cooper Kupp. He would be at Eastern Washington. They'd play Oregon. He'd go 10 catches for 203 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Oregon would still win by 50, but you went, who is this kid that's just catching this ball everywhere? I think that's the type of year that Bryce Lance can have. North Dakota State's a powerhouse at the FCS level, so they're always going to be good. They bring in an awful lot of talent, a lot of guys that could probably compete at an upper level. But as Austin mentioned, if you drop him in the SEC, where does he fall into play? I think there's a lot of DBs that would match up real well against him, and I don't think his skill set throws him above any other wide receiver.
All right, here we go. I cannot say this enough. I would say it 40 times if I could. Everything I'm about to say is based on him playing at the FCS level. We don't know what he'll look like at SEC or NFL. It's all projection. So this is the notes based on the competition he's currently playing. He seems bigger and faster than everyone he's playing against in FCS. I saw him run away from FCS level defensive backs, but that's FCS. That's not SEC. It's just not. Makes lots of tough catches and circus plays. Austin already hit that. I mean, you talk about crazy, wild circus plays. It's everywhere. He's dominating this level. If I'm going to draft a guy from this level, I always want to know first thing, is he dominating that level? If he's not, I'm probably not going to, even really consider him that hard. But if he is, it's like, okay, well, if he's dominating this level, what would he be like at the next level? The Southeastern Conference. Richly gifted at keeping his hand or feet in bounds. Ryan Williams seems to be able to control his core mass and just keep his whole body in bounds at any time. Bryce doesn't necessarily seem to be doing that so much, as he just seems to be able to keep his body close enough to the inbound or boundary line that he can get his hand in bounds or his foot tapped. Just excellent at that. One of the best I've seen this year's group of being able to do that. It's excellent. Austin mentioned that. His red zone work is excellent. Sometimes they'll give him a handoff on in around sweep, so he's not breaking 60-yard touchdowns, but he's fast enough that they like to give him that little jet sweep, let him work through traffic. I saw that several times. Between the 20s, he can contribute through some of the vertical deep ball, again, not beating people over the top so much as just beating, his one man-on-man cover with size. But also has a solid square in slant route. That's decent. Excellent hands. Not going to blow NFL people away with speed. That's what I wrote. But he's competitively fast. He looks like he could hang in there speed-wise, but I don't see him beating SEC or NFL defensive backs with his speed. I just don't see that at all. And not a lot of horizontal separation, I didn't think either. Working his way across the field, I didn't really see. It's almost like he's just relying on the size there, less than that. So I've got him at the end of the third round, early fourth round. I do like him. I think he could be an NFL player. I just don't yet see enough. And, as much as I respect him for staying at North Dakota State, selfishly, I would like to have seen him this year at an Alabama or an LSU, see what he could do, So we'll find out. That's Bryce Lance. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening. This is Pro Football Enterprises. That is Austin Freed. That is Shane Ratliff. We are coming to you throughout September with more tight ends. We haven't touched tight ends at all yet. We got 5 of them coming throughout the month of September. So we will be mixing that in as well. Have a great one, everybody. Thank you. Bye.